Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Digital Collective. I'm your host, James Hicks from HicksNewMedia. And on this show, we focus on the people, the platforms, and the tools that are making positive strides within technology sector today. My guest today is Mr. Jim Fuhs. Jim is the president of Fusion Marketing. He's a retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel turned digital marketing consultant, speaker, live streamer, podcaster, remote live stream and virtual event producer. He's all the things. But first and foremost, I want to give some thanks to Jim for his service to our country. Today, I want to spend time talking with Jim about how he fuses his military and his Marine Corps leadership skills and tactics with that of digital marketing, how he's using what he's learned from his experience in the military to do this next phase, this next chapter of his life, and how he's giving back to folks that are looking to learn the digital marketing space, to learn the content creation space, and things of that. Get your pen and paper ready, folks. We're going to have a great conversation. Ask your questions whenever you got them. Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, look at him right there. Jim Fuhs is in the building. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, James. It's an honor to be here. You as well, a fellow veteran. It's great to get to have a chance to have a conversation with you. Loved the time we got to spend together in Dallas. That
Dallas.
was
Everything
a lot.
except the rain, right?
Yeah,
Everything except the apocalyptic rainstorm and the locusts that were outside. Did you run
yeah.
into all of
Oh, that
the?
was crazy. That was absolutely crazy.
That's all
I think
good, man. Well, listen, I appreciate you for taking some time. I know today has been an active day for you. You're highly sought after, right? In terms of
well, at
your
least for a day.
today's a good day. Then how about that? Today's a good day. I tell you what, I like to have folks that come on the show as opposed to me just that monologue and the highlighted bullet points. I really like you to tell, if you don't mind, your origin story. Who is Jim Fuhs? What is it that makes Jim Fuhs who he is today? And kind of some of that background story as well as I mentioned about your time in the military, if you don't mind, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of interesting. A lot of people don't know. My mom is from Lima, Peru, and she came to the States in her late teens and met my dad, who at the time was in the Navy, stationed in the Pentagon in D.C. So they met, got married, and I was actually born in Indianapolis, Indiana. And about the age of 2, we moved to the D.C. area where I grew up, and actually went to the high school formerly known as Robert E. Lee High School. It's now John L. Lewis High School. So that's one of those little trivia things. Because living in Atlanta, right, John Lewis was a big deal here before he passed away. And but so I was an athlete, played soccer, baseball, basketball, and then one day watching a TV commercial. You remember those things on TV? I saw these Marine commercials, and I'd always been into military history. In fact, when I was in 6th grade, I wrote a paper about how when I grew up, I was going to go to the Naval Academy and be a naval officer. I almost got it right, but not quite. But the senior year of high school, I decided to enlist in the Marine Corps Reserves. I actually went to boot camp after graduation and went to Paris Island. So I know there's might be some Hollywood Marines watching from San Diego. That's okay. And then I started college at Old Dominion. And one thing was that the Marine Corps gave me that self-discipline to really help me get driven. And so I went into ROTC, ended up getting a scholarship, and then I got commissioned in 1989, before the internet, I think, and was a double major in business and ended up being a financial management and contracting and supply officer in the Marines, and got to do some pretty cool stuff. Deployed a couple times, in the Middle East, as well as helped stand up. This is kind of that one of those like small claim to fame things. I was one of the guys that stood up the Marine Corps Special Operations Command at Camp Lejeune. I was the guy in charge of all the money, and that was a lot of fun. I got to learn about some things that I can have to take to my grave, so to speak. So some things that uh, technology wise, I'd love to talk about, but I'm not allowed to.
Know how
And
that is. Know how that
yeah,
is.
yeah, and of course, I was married, I had 2 daughters, Brittany and Maggie, who are in their 20s, but unfortunately, first marriage didn't work out, but got remarried 4 years ago. And the funny story there is my wife, Karen, we originally met in 3rd grade in
Wow.
Catholic school. And the last time we had seen each other was in 9th grade. We went to rival high schools, and we reconnected through Facebook of all things in
Mm.
2017. And so so that's eventually what brought me to Atlanta in about 2018 after our wedding, and I've been here ever since. See, my good friend Chris Stone is here, who I work with on Dealcasters and some other stuff, and we've become good friends. It's nice he lives in the area because COVID really changed a lot of things, but I'd always been into tech,
Yeah.
right? I mean, as a kid, remember when the Atari 2600 came out, and
You're dating
my first
yourself now.
yeah,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
know. My first computer was a Commodore 64.
Had that.
And
I had the VIC
I was
20. So
almost
I again, I think I'm even older than you. I had the VIC 20. So we won't go into that,
okay.
but it's
Well,
all
I
right.
my parents wouldn't let me get that yet, so
Okay.
but then but then what was funny was I was a computer science major originally in college, but then when I saw that the guys that were like juniors were spending all their time programming in their dorm rooms, I was like, that's not for me. So
Hmm.
I, I have a lot of respect for them, but I've always liked tech. Used to remember modem cards. I used to
I do.
build computers and do all that
Old
stuff.
school 300 baud modems. You see, okay, we're
Yep,
just flashing back now. A lot of
yep.
the new folks and younger folks
They're
have
like,
no
what are you
idea
guys
what we're
talking
talking
about?
about with you got mail or those.
That's right. Yeah, and so I got into this whole digital marketing space in about 2016, but I really started getting into video in 18. And you know, who I would have never thought, right? But the power of Twitter, growing my Twitter presence, was able to get accepted to the Amazon influencer program when they looked at Twitter as a profile. And so, doing that, doing live streams, and that really set me up for when COVID happened, because all of a sudden people started coming to me, hey, we need help live streaming. We need to stay connected with our customers, and was able to take that skill set that I had learned from, being on this side of the camera like we are now, and put it on the other side, and
Okay.
really enjoy doing that.
Okay. So let me, and I appreciate you going into that because again, that sets some of the context that I want to dive into. And I see Mr. Stone is in the building. And someone on the Dealcaster user is already heckling. Asked Jim about his marathon training. We're going to get into that for sure. You're closing more rings per day on your Apple Watch than I am, and I need to talk to you about that. Um, but one of the questions that I had really, and you've already started to talk about it, is during that period of time when the world stopped, right? When we were locked down and COVID, and then from a business perspective, from an entrepreneurial perspective, how were you able to utilize that time and either pivot, find something new to do or a new way to do it, right? Because again, now that we can't go out and actually physically meet individuals, or did you utilize that time to broaden your portfolio of services and capabilities, right? Did you start doing more consulting and saying this is was this when you started getting into Amazon live selling, right? Was this when you were starting to tell folks these are the peripherals and this is the infrastructure that you need to do your own thing? How did that 2 years really shape you and Fusion Marketing?
Yeah, so one thing was, I retired 13 years ago from the Marines, and I
Mm,
think, and you as well, being, Air Force, right? It's always a part of you. And I think
yeah.
for a little bit of time, because at first I was in defense contracting, you kind of struggle with that, hey, I'm a civilian now. I'm supposed to act like a civilian, but you realize that that military a part of you is always a part of you. And
Yeah.
for me, literally having 25 years of my life as being a United States Marine is not going to go away. And one of the big things in the Marines that we, you know, work with, it's right, adapt and overcome, right? And so I've had things happen. I lived in North Carolina during Hurricane Florence. My
Mm,
house had 36 inches of rain go through the roof. I mean, $80,000 worth of damage. The business I was doing at the time was all local, like social media. And so it's like you got two choices. You could sit there and feel sorry for yourself or figure out, all right, what are we going to do?
yeah.
And so my business partner at the time, it's like, you know what? We've got the internet. We need to just start reaching out to other people. And so that's kind of when that started, right? And that was, early 2018. And so when this happened, right, the COVID, it was like I already knew it's like, hey, I've got the technology. I can still meet with people, right? I don't we Zoom obviously started to grow. And then even being in groups like Toastmasters,
Right.
I helped my club overcome like, oh, how are we going to meet? It's like, hey, we just get on Zoom. I can help everybody manage the process because we got to keep moving forward, right? We can't just sit there, feel sorry for ourselves. And I think for me, that's part of that military mindset of, when you think you got it bad, there's somebody out there that has it even worse than you. And so I just I never feel sorry for myself. I just, like say, hey, all right,
Put your head
pick
down
it
and
up.
keep going, right? Just drive harder through the storm. And and
That's
I and I asked that question really in context because I want folks to understand that it's you don't have to be long into this industry to have success, right? Again, it's only been 2, 3, 4 years or so, really, before uh, the live selling pieces come in, the additional consulting pieces, the remote uh, video streaming and things of that nature. And all of those different aspects of your business have really taken shape within the last half of a decade. So, folks who are hesitant to even get started, that are worrying about the infrastructure, all the lights, camera, and action. If you've got a service to provide, if you've got some knowledge, if you know 1% more than the next person, you might be an expert. So get out there and do it. So I really wanted to hone in on that, the fact that, yeah, you haven't been doing this particular chapter of your life for decades. This is relatively new. So I appreciate you on that.
Yeah, and I think too, it goes back to, like, processes. It goes back to, trying to get better 1% every day. I mean, I've told my kids, I'm sure you've told your kids and others, it's like you never stop learning, right?
Yeah,
I feel like once you stop learning is when you start dying, in my
there it
opinion.
is.
So, you've gotta, whether it's reading books, whether it's, going to a YouTube university. I mean, that's the one thing that I think people today have a tremendous advantage of what we didn't necessarily have growing up is these resources to help you get started in what I mean, you can learn how to code, you can learn how to become a video editor, and there's a lot of people out there that need that help, but they don't know where to start. So even if you just get started, right? And that's kind of how I started my business is I was in a business networking group and I had this guy that trusted me said, "Hey, I'll start doing your social media for you." That started to lead to success, right? That starts to lead to other people referring you. And I think that you can just take that model and to apply it to whatever service you're doing. I think sometimes the challenge becomes and that's part of the challenge I have right now is scaling, right? Because
Mm,
do I trust somebody enough to bring them, into the tent and do that? It's a little different when you're working in an industry or in the military because, you know, the people that do their job, they kinda rise, and those that don't, we get rid of them. But when it's your business, you don't always have that ability to get rid of somebody or
yeah.
or, worry about those sort of things.
So let me here I go pivoting, right? I've got to run a show and I've got my questions, but here I knew this was going to be organic and this was going to be amazing. So let me ask you about that, but let me throw this comment up here from Mr. Stone. It said, my life changed immediately when I met Jim Fuhs. He enabled other motivated entrepreneurs and lead together. Does the work, earns the influence. Love that. Love that. Appreciate you, Chris. Let me get the comments in there, right? Um, getting the assistance, right? Not doing 100% of the effort, not doing all of the work yourself. And is it really relinquishing control? Is it relinquishing uh, command and signal? You see where I'm going? I'm starting to
Yeah.
go in there. I'm
Yeah.
starting to go
Yeah.
there, right? I mean, what is it that is the hesitant piece for you of bringing in some, maybe an editor, or maybe a copywriter, or someone to write things of that nature? Is it maybe the thought that some of the control of what is fusion marketing is going to go away, or some things are going to slip through the cracks? What do you think it is that's causing you to kind of be hesitant to bring other folks in to help you with that?
I think part of it is, you know, having that, demand for excellence, and are they gonna meet the standards that you put on yourself? And finding that person that feel like they're gonna do it to the level that you want, and because I do think, right, there are definitely some things. I know Chris and I were talking about this today, that I could outsource, right? But it's like, are they gonna do it the way I want to? And so I realize that's one of my, the pebble in my shoe, I would say right now, is just deciding what is it that I'm willing to let go so that I can do other things. I mean, that's what's worked out so well for me and Chris with what we do with Dealcasters, as well as like the show I do with my friend Tim, is that we share in the responsibility, right? Who does what, whether it's finding guests, who's doing some of the editing for this or that. And but that's also because we've built that level of trust. And so I think when you're an entrepreneur, that's part of it. And then if they're not, I don't necessarily want to have employees. And I say that because I don't necessarily want to get in all the tax implications that, when you're dealing with, W-2 employees. I think I'm more likely to work with, like 1099 type folks. I've done that in the past, and that's worked out well. But then on the flip side, when you do that, because they are a freelancer, so to speak, they may not always be available when you need them. So you really have
Yeah,
to build that bench.
good point. Good point. Um, Back to the premise and the design for today's show, right? Because again, I think we're starting to weave into that, and I want to talk about the makeup of you and the makeup for your business. So we started to talk about, again, the why of fusion marketing. Started to talk about some of the, maybe the internal mental challenges that you're having, or just executing to a scaling perspective. um, how your business is laid out, and how you actually, again, I'll use the word again, execute on a day-to-day basis, really stems from your military background. Talk to us a little bit about the SMEAC, right? The
Yeah.
principles that you learned, again, from the military and in the Marine Corps, of how you go about delivering products, delivering services, and your expertise to your customers.
Right. So, one of the things is that as a business owner that you have to realize early on, and I think this is where the military helps, is not everybody is your customer. Not everybody is going to be someone you want to work with. Just because somebody is willing to hand you a check, even if it's, more than you expected, they may not be a good fit. And so I think part of it is like, what is the situation? Is this something that you want to do? Right. That's the first test. So when you meet with someone, and part of the drive for my business is I want to help others succeed.
Okay.
Right. That's kind of the mindset for me. I want to help other people get better, succeed. Obviously, if they're successful, they're going to refer other people to you, but you still got to kind of make sure that you have your processes in place, right? And so like when we talk about the mission, like the mission might be, we're going to help you create a remote produced event, and this is what it's going to take to do it. And that's where we get into the execution piece of, okay, when is the event going to be? How many people are going to be on this show? And then we get into those, the details, right? The admin and the logistics of, okay, we're going to use, Ecamm or Restream, or whatever product. And, we're going to have a checklist. All your speakers need to have this capability. We have to
Right.
do a run through. And if you're not willing to agree to that, right, then it's not going to happen, because we're not going to, uh, you know, let our standards lower because you don't want to go through the right way to do things. And I think that's part of the military mindset is doing things the right way because it's ultimately we want to accomplish that mission, we have to do things the right way. Things will happen, right? The whole we call it the OODA loop, right? Where something changes and we have to adjust, and that's
Right.
fine. But, ultimately, if you run into a potential client that's kinda like, "Well, I don't know," you gotta be able to just say, "Well, you know what? We're just not meant to work together." And so I think that's been a big part of when I look at working with people, there's those expectations, I think, really on both ends, but, I think that part of the challenge and even part of the reason why I shifted more towards the video side of things was, you know, God bless those social media managers because a lot of times what happens is, 1, people don't understand what it takes to manage social media. They
Yeah.
just think it's, "Oh, well, my teenager does TikTok, they can do it." But you gotta come up with the content, and, you know, I'm not, HicksNewMedia. So if you want me to post content for you, I can, but it's like, you gotta provide me
Yes.
that that
Framework.
base
Yeah.
that framework,
Yeah.
and you can't sit there and it's like, "Well, hey, can you post something tomorrow about this?" It's like, I don't know your voice, right? All these things, and so I think sometimes that's what people don't understand, and so with video, especially live video, it's like right now, there's no take 2. If we mess up, it is what it is, and I somewhat like that, right? Because it really makes you focus at the time of, execution.
So focus is my mantra word for the year, right? Stay focused on you. So I appreciate you for throwing that in. I'll drop a little something in your PayPal or something in your I don't know, maybe I'll buy some Dealcasters merch or something.
There
Um,
you go.
so before you go to the others, and I think I know what you're going to say on this, but I don't want to assume. None of these seem to be negotiable, right? From the perspective that if you don't have all of these pieces in place, it's really difficult for you to say again, this is a good working relationship that I'm going to embark on, or this is a good opportunity, this is a good deal, this is a good contract. If you don't have kind of an understanding of what again the situation looks like, of how you're going to execute, if you don't have a good understanding of what the logistics pieces look like, and you don't have an understanding on all of those things, regardless of what the check and what the deposit looks like or could look like, it's probably not a good move for you long term, right? Short term, yeah. Again, you deposit a check and all is well there. But again, just if you want to set that mindset, if you want to set that precedence that this is who Fusion Marketing is, working with X, Y, and Z industry, agency, company, right? And this doesn't match who your morals are, your your go to market strategy, your ethics, and things of that nature. That could be more of a tarnish moving forward and be more of a detriment long term than that short term gain. Is does that kind of sound right?
Yeah, oh, definitely, definitely. I think because right, you gotta put your head on the pillow at night, and when you wake up the next day, do you feel good about what you're doing,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And I think that's so important, and yeah, there's definitely, companies that I wouldn't work with. I don't know, care how much they would offer, and I think that, that's part of the challenge is, and part of that is relationship building, right? It's really getting to know, like, and trust people. And as Marine, leaders, right, it's kind of like a, you know, teacher, mentor thing, like, we teach people to get better so that they can someday take our job over, and so it's kinda the same thing when you're working with a business, you wanna help them get to a point that, because as a consultant, ultimately, your goal is to allow that customer to succeed on their own,
I've
right?
always said work yourself out of a job.
Exactly.
Right, as a consultant, right, that's exactly right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and so I think that's where, kind of the command and control thing comes into mind. It's like, okay, we are gonna have meetings, right? We are going to see, are you doing the things that you need to do for us to continue that relationship? Because if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, it's gonna be very difficult for
Yeah,
things to, come to a successful conclusion.
I love that. I love that. Listen, I see I'm over here peering off to the right, and I see tons of folks on Twitter We talked about this ahead of time. You can't engage on Twitter. Thank you for watching, but come on over to YouTube or LinkedIn as well, so you can ask questions like Dr. Chris Stone is already in the comments there. If you got questions for Mr. Fuhs, please put a Q in front of it so I can capture it. Um, let me ask you this: what is kind of the most frequent ask that you've been positioned with from potential clients as of late, right? Because it's been so fast, the evolution of digital marketing, video, podcasting, uh, live selling, all the things revolving around sharing and spreading messages and telling stories. What is it the biggest ask that you are being positioned with dealing with that? Folks who are looking to get started, I think, is one. Let me list that. Folks that are
Mhm.
looking to get started, and folks who have already been in for a minute, right? What's that next evolution of someone who says, you know what, I've been doing it for 6, 7, 8 months, kind of got my feet underneath me. What's how do I branch out and do something just a little bit different?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest questions that I get is, like, "Oh, well, how much do you charge?" "How do I get clients?" And, part of that is you gotta build a network, right? You've gotta find those companies, that's where Twitter and LinkedIn, and I think you and I both find, like, where are the business people hanging out? And that's probably why I don't spend a lot of time on TikTok, right? Because I'm looking for people that are looking for help with video. Whether it's live streaming or whether it's even producing, working with companies like Shure and Heil, and now working with Focusrite, we're showing them what our product is as far as from a video standpoint, but we also are helping them understand the Amazon, ecosystem because some of these companies with their Amazon listings, as an example, don't understand where they're missing out on the opportunity to get more eyes on their product, and that's where video has become very powerful. It, in fact, I had a talk today with my part of my business coaches team that I work with, and I kind of blew their mind a little bit. And it's like you need to put out a deck that explains this to people because people don't understand that they're leaving money on the table as an Amazon seller when they're not using video. 3 times more less returns when there's a video on the page versus when there, isn't.
So okay, right. That's easy to understand, right? Again, when you put it out there and you lay it out there and you show the dollars and the cents, why is it difficult though? Again, and I may already know the answer, but again, I want to hear from you. Why is it so difficult for an organization to move to this new media, this new ecosystem, these new buyers, and this new form of commerce, as opposed to what's worked probably for them, yeah, for the last 10, 20, 30 years, when today we are that online e-commerce marketing. I want to order it today and I want it tomorrow delivered in my garage before 5 p.m. I'm waiting for some things and they'll be here tomorrow before at
Right.
5 o'clock. But right, again, that's kind of the expectation now of not only the business consumer but also the personal consumer. Why is it so difficult, do you think, for organizations to move into understanding that piece, that video is so important?
I think it kinda goes back to and I'm sure you heard this in your Air Force days, you may still hear it in your current situation. Well, that's the way we've always done it.
Yeah, again, I said I knew the answer, but I wanted to hear someone else say it. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, that's the way we've always done it. We're
That's your
gonna we're gonna cold
SOPs. Okay, yeah,
call, we're gonna, use direct mail and all these things. Apparently there's still I'll call them yellow page type things around, and people still spend money on them. I don't know when the last time you looked
right.
in one. I think sometimes you can use it to prop up things, or they're
Listen,
not
there's
even
still
big
people
enough
using fax
for people to
machines,
use.
brother.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know. I don't know what's
absolutely.
going on in the world. There is definitely something wrong in the matrix. There are still people using fax machines. So okay,
Yeah, so I think making them understand that, you can accelerate your time to success. I think that they're afraid of change. I think that's the biggest thing, and one thing have embraced is, you have 2 choices with change.
Mm,
You can either manage the change or the change will manage you, but change is gonna happen. It's not going to change, right? I mean, the place I lived in, Eastern North Carolina, was this small town and, they were never gonna lose that small town feel. Well, guess what? Despite all these protests, Walmart came to town. It's changed the personality of the town. So it didn't matter what you didn't want, it happened,
yeah.
right? So could have people have taken a stronger stand to manage that change and prevent it from happening? Absolutely. And I think that's what we see a lot now, because we're told by these, we'll call them gurus, experts, what we should do. Uh, but each business has, its own unique thing. And so what works for one isn't necessarily going to work for another, right? You'll see people like, oh, you got to be doing shorts. You got to be on TikTok. It's like, doesn't make sense.
Right.
It's not to say you shouldn't be doing videos that are on YouTube, as an example. Have a YouTube channel that educates your consumer about your product, because people go to YouTube to learn about things, to find solutions to their problem. And I think where I try to couch video, and I think podcast as well, is this is an opportunity for you to either educate your consumer, potential client, as well as you learn from other people, right? Like our friend Jeff C would kind of joke that, you've got me on your show and you're getting free consulting, right? You're not having to pay for it. So
Somehow I'm gonna pay for it. I know it's all good. And Jeff, he's a good dude too. So I won't talk bad about him. No, he's a good dude. Okay,
but he always says that on his show. He's like, yeah, I've got so and so on my show and get some free consulting today.
love it, love it. Let me ask this because that just actually sparked another question, right? And I call it trying to boil the ocean and try not to boil the ocean because again, we hear again from the quote unquote gurus, experts, whatever the influencers. I hate the word influencer, but the folks who seem to be or think that they're in the know and on the pulse, trying to be on Snapchat, trying to be on TikTok, trying to be on Instagram, trying to be on all these other platforms to attract a community, attract an audience when if your audience and if your community and where you have most engagement and most influence, I don't want to use the word influence, more of an advocacy is on Twitter, why not be there? Right.
Right.
Why try to go to places like a Twitch when you don't know anyone on Twitch? You don't stream to Twitch. And I bring this into the multi-streaming conversation. Why would I be multi-streaming right now to some place like a Twitch if I don't have two subscribers on that platform just because I can? Or right, it just doesn't make sense. So again, try not to boil the ocean, but go to where your community is,
Right.
and that way you can really be more relevant. You can be more of a shepherd to that community because you're not asking them to uproot and go to someplace else, install another app on their phone, and learn a new platform or something of that nature. Do you agree with that, or how has the Tim and Jim show, Dealcasters, Fusion Marketing? Where do you guys, where do you live?
Well, we do, like you are doing tonight, we do some multi-streaming, but
Mm,
really the multi-streaming is more of an awareness play. Where we really want people to engage with us is on Amazon, or in the case of the Tim and Jim show, and that's been a little bit of a, over time has changed, is like you see how like Facebook, you rarely get engagement, right?
right,
And
right.
so really the idea is to start to drive people more towards YouTube. Now, LinkedIn of late has had some good engagement, but sometimes it seems like the video side of it, there seems to be some issues streaming to it. I don't know if you've
Yeah,
felt
no,
that as
I
well.
have I see it all the time too. I'm streaming. I'm pushing out right now at 1080, and I normally like to go out at 4K for post processing and editing things of that nature. So that's one of the downfalls of going out to LinkedIn. I gotta pull
Yeah,
pull the quality down. Even though Amazon is 720, but we can talk about that too. But
right.
you know,
But I think too, going back to your point, our another vet and friend, Doc Rock, right? He's just going live now to YouTube, right? He's like, I'm not gonna spend all my time on these other platforms. My community is, on YouTube. Of course, I know he's starting to use Discord. I'm slowly trying to understand that, right? It's like you said, now I gotta learn something else. I'm not trying to sound like a crotchety old guy, but
The
right,
old
we
guy
we
on
have to
the
adjust
out
a
there,
little
to get
bit.
off my lawn guy. Okay, that's who
Right.
Fuhs is. He's the get off my lawn kind of guy.
No, but I'm learning about Discord and even Web3. I could see the potential there, more with, and when I say the metaverse, I'm not thinking of the metaverse in the Facebook term, but more like with, products like Spatial,
Mm,
being able to live stream into Spatial and have people interact, almost, like a live audience with their avatars, and it would be like, if this was a recorded video, maybe you play it some and you stop. It's like, "Okay, what do you guys think about that?" And have that conversation in the metaverse where people can actually talk as opposed to,
mm.
having this chat going on. So I think there's some opportunities there for business. I think we're still way early in all that. Um, and so I think sometimes, like, people, it goes back to what you were saying earlier, like, you got the guru saying, "Oh, this is what you gotta do. You gotta do it now or you're gonna miss the boat." And, I agree with you 100%, James, that you should focus on where your people are,
Yeah.
right? And see what you can do to and ask them, "What
Yes.
is it you'd like to see more of?"
Yeah.
Right? Because sometimes, it's like, "Oh, we're gonna go to this platform," and they're like, I don't wanna do that." And then they don't follow you. And then, is that really helping? I think that's one
It's
of
to
those things
every. I
you
think
have
it's to
to.
everyone's detriment. And Chris, I'm gonna bring your comment up here in a second. But again, we as content creators should realize that rule number one is we're not doing this for ourselves.
Mhm.
Right? I, I've got a whole lot of other things that I would like to talk about. I'd like to talk about coffee. I'd like to talk about single malt scotch. I'd like to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff. But my community resonates and lives in the solopreneur, entrepreneur, business tech world, content creation, and those are the things that they want to hear about. So I am, again, I'll use the same word again. I'm here to shepherd that community and provide the content and the context that helps them get better. So I love how you said that, your one of your primary objectives as well is to really facilitate learning amongst your community. Uh, Back to this comment right here from Mr. Stone. But what if you may be able to reach someone in that ocean? Maybe that community is there. You got to swim in to know it, man. Okay, see, all right.
Yeah, that's deep.
Let me give this guy access to the back to the studio. Let's get him on camera too, right? He's over here heckling from the back of the room now.
Right. But no, that's a great point. In fact, that's sometimes, as a speaker, right? What
Yeah.
you don't always think about. It's not that as a speaker you're gonna go in there to wow the whole room. You may not, but
Mm,
you may affect one person,
yeah.
and that will make all the difference. And so I think that's a great point. And so, you know, yeah, I guess to the point of like, oh, well, if I throw something out on this platform, I really do something on, maybe I'll catch somebody's attention, and it'll, lead to a conversation, lead to, helping them. I mean, in some aspects, right, by becoming a part of the Amazon community, the Ecamm community, right? That's how we've gotten to know each other. So you just never know, but you have to get engaged with people. And I think that's the other piece that
That's
businesses
it.
miss
I
out
think
on.
that's it right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
You gotta engage.
yeah.
And
I mean,
and
you
I
can't just throw something out there and just leave it out there and not be consistent in um, resonating with that community, because the Twitch community is different than the YouTube community, is different than the Twitter community, right? And the way folks like to interact and communicate, and you got to learn that, right? You can't just assume that you're going to throw out a 16 by 9 thumbnail on YouTube and try to put that exact same thumbnail out on Instagram. No, it's one to one, right?
right?
And then we talked before in the back. See, I'm getting all excited. I'm drinking good coffee today, so I'm all excited. Back in the day, we were talking about vertical videos were terrible. Now all we're doing is shooting vertical videos, right?
Right.
So if you
Or
can't,
how do we take our landscape video and turn it into a vertical
right?
video? 'Cause
There were
there's
apps for that. Remember, there literally wasn't. I remember because I downloaded it one time because I was testing it out. But there was the big cardinal sin of shooting video in portrait mode instead of landscape mode. But now that's all we're doing, right? Shorts, reels, stories, all of that. And they're all in vertical. So adapting and adopting to the conversations that are had in that particular community matter and resonate. So that we kind of agree with you then, Chris. There, right? Right. If we're going to push something out there to all these locations, be cognizant and be intentional about reaching out to those particular folks, so that you are not talking YouTube vernacular on an Instagram uh, reel or
Well,
story or live or thing of that nature.
and we see some of that too, if you wanna call it the laziness of like, "Okay, I'm gonna
Oh,
create a
yeah.
TikTok, and I'm gonna take that same exact thing without any and I'm gonna throw it on Instagram, I'm gonna
Don't
throw
do
it
it.
on Facebook."
Don't do it.
Don't do it because it's you're wasting your time,
Yeah.
and I think that's always been one of my pet peeves of socials when you can tell people are just basically copying and pasting to other platforms without making any adjustments for the platform, they've got or they're using 50 hashtags on a Facebook post, right? And, or even these tweets, I'm sure you see them. These tweets where they got a bunch of hashtag, it's like, "Come on,"
that,
that's not
that that don't
getting
resonate anywhere. They're making up their own hashtags. They okay. Now we're going off the deep end, and I might need an intervention. So maybe we'll table this. We'll have another roundtable conversation about how James can not be so upset with people who don't do things right. Um, let me ask you about this. We talked about early adopters. We talked about folks, coming to you and asking you for some suggestions about how to do what it is that you do, so for themselves. Uh, Key takeaways for someone who may be at a roadblock, right? So someone who is already in the industry, someone who is already providing content to a community, but they're getting to that point where, or they've gotten to that point where it's too much, or they think it's too much, right? They're at that burnout stage. They're um, not as excited about telling stories or creating content. What do you tell folks, and how do you tell folks to get over that when they reach that roadblock kind of point in their journey?
I think part of it is you gotta take a step back, right? I mean, you gotta have I'll say you gotta have work-life balance, right? You don't think that working, 60 hours a week is sustainable for one. And that's where you have to really start looking at, what can you outsource? What can you maybe it's time to shift into something different. What is it that you do like? And don't feel like you gotta keep doing the same thing. That goes back to the learning, right? Because maybe you don't wanna be on camera anymore. You just wanna be the behind the scenes person. Go find someone to be that on camera talent for you. I mean, I think even looking at, as an example, in the Amazon space, there are channels that the people that own that channel never show up on the page. They find people that wanna be on video and talk about products, and I think that can be the same for a business. The business owner doesn't have to be the one on camera, as an example, but they need to make sure that whoever they pick to do that represents their values, their company, and understands that message because 'cause you're basically turning them into your spokesperson. And so I think that if you're getting into that burnout stage, what is it that's burning you out, right? Are you spending time with your family, right? Are you, don't forget that you know, that's probably the most important thing, right? The most important thing isn't the work you do, right? Because it's like they say, right? When we're gone, they're not going to say, I wish I'd spent more time at work. And so I think we got to remember that.
Love that. Right. That's it's putting it all into perspective. Right. Again, this stuff could be on autopilot with some framework and some foundation, some standard operating procedure, just something around it, some uh, gloves around the business. But if you aren't healthy in and of yourself, physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever the case may be that matters to you, you can't help anyone else if you aren't helping yourself. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Wow. I love that. Love that. Um, Listen, I already talked and mentioned how active you were, the busy man. You've been on like 5 shows today. You woke up at like 4 a.m. You've been streaming. You've been tweeting. You've been I don't know what else you're doing. You're probably betting on the games
Did,
because
did a
those
product
Braves.
video.
We could talk about those Braves. They're doing what they're
Yeah.
doing. Shouts out to the Atlanta Braves. But
Yeah. That was
um,
amazing.
maybe tune in at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time for Team No Sleep. We're going to talk a little baseball. We're going to talk Judge
Oh,
though.
good. I'll definitely do
We're
that.
gonna talk
I
about
enjoyed the conversation you had a few weeks ago, because one thing is, like, I learned some things watching that show, and I was
yeah.
like, "Huh." Yeah, and see that and of course, then I see a show like that, and Chris knows every once in a while, I was like, I'd like to have a sports show. I don't know if anybody would listen, but"
We're going to talk about some. So okay, segue real quick here, squirrel. We're going to talk about some things, and it's going to get very detailed, very uh, yeah. We're going to have some discussions that are going to make you raise your eyebrows, and social impact for sure. We're going to get into that stuff. Um, so yeah, 6:30 p.m. There's a little plug for Team No Sleep.
it's a good show.
Talk to me a little bit real quick while I still got you, because I want to be cognizant of your time, sir, about what it is that you're doing. You know, I made the joke about, again, you've been up all day, you've been streaming, you've been tweeting, you've been doing all the things. But I mean, your time is in demand, and the fact that you are doing multiple live segments, either about coaching, about consulting, about how to use digital media, about how and the value of live selling. Right, it's primarily on the Amazon platform as opposed to any other platform, because listen, Amazon is now a noun, right? It's like Kleenex and tissue, right? You want to buy something, you go buy it on Amazon. It's like Google, right? That
Right.
kind of thing. Talk to us about what you're getting into now with fusion marketing and with some of your other ventures.
Yeah, I think these last couple conferences that I've attended, People of Video, Podcast Movement, have really made me think about, on a from a YouTube side of things, is I'm gonna start putting out more content that teaches people, right? Talks about some of these things like we're talking about, like how do you get started with video? Even like we were talking about things like, you could create a LinkedIn newsletter for your
Yeah,
company page, or
yeah,
even like you're doing, you're going live on your company page. There's some pros and cons to that. People don't even know that you can do that. Uh, I think the one of the most powerful things I found out about the LinkedIn newsletter, and we're getting ready to start one, for deal casters here too, is LinkedIn is promoting it for you, right? They're sending it out as an email to these people that are subscribing to your newsletter, and that's going to get eyes on your content. And so, all your content doesn't have to be video, right? Or there's ways to take video and transcribe it.
yes.
I mean, things like Otter and some other Descript,
The
which
script,
I
yeah, I
know
use the script all day. Yeah,
big favorite of folks, um, because people consume things in different ways. So part of that is, I haven't done a good job, and I'm not afraid to say it, about uh, self promotion, right? Like I don't tell people all the time, like, yeah, Chris and I have done, remote productions for StreamYard. I've done them for MIT, IBM Research, the San Francisco Chronicle. People don't know that because I'm not sticking it out there, and then that's not to be. Bragging. It's just like, well, if people knew that, they might say, "Oh, well, we've got a production coming up. You think you could help us?" And right, and it's about building a team. I know that's something you're starting to
yeah,
get into, and a lot of times you need a team, right, for some of these bigger productions. So, it would love to get a chance to work with you as an example if you needed help, or or vice versa, because it goes back to working with people you trust,
yeah.
and when you have a good team, things go smoother, and I think, it becomes a win-win for everyone. So a lot of it is that. I'm also going to be, continuing to teach, I teach social media classes at, 2 community colleges in North Carolina virtually. So I'll be teaching about, I think I'm doing a class on YouTube, Facebook, and some of the other stuff, because 'cause I'm always keeping up with the stuff
Hmm.
by, because we practice what we're using, and so if you don't do it, it's kinda hard to talk about it, and
That's
so,
true. If you're supposed to be the professor up there in front of the room, but listen,
right.
I'm gonna give you these flowers now. If you don't want them, if you don't talk about them, we're gonna put fusionmarketing.com on the screen right here, and you
Oh
listen,
god.
catch up with this man. Recent appearances, he's everywhere, ladies and gentlemen. This guy right here, you need to Google Jim Fuhs. Just saying. Um, Help you out from a consulting perspective, help you out with setting up an agency, heading up your workshops, setting up again something I'm passionate about right now, remote live stream production. So I
Yes.
will make sure and put the link to this, to your primary website, your YouTube platforms, right? Fusion Marketing, Dealcasters, and the Tim and Jim Show, which was a kick this morning. I loved being on watching that, the engagement of that, right, of you two on that show for sure. I will check that out. But then again, really where I think the majority of your time probably is really right here now, right? Just
Yeah.
talking to brands, having the conversation about not just gear, right? I think we should talk. We should move out of that, and maybe I'll bring you and Chris on to have this conversation. It's not just about uh, laptops and cameras and microphones and things like that. It's really about the tools that you need from a business perspective uh, to fulfill what it is that you're trying to provide to your community and to your audience and to your customers. Right. So it could be all of that stuff, but there are other aspects as well. And you are working with brands. They're sending you the stuff. They're compensating you for talking about the stuff. And you're providing that advertisement and that communication and that non-biased review. If you don't like the mouse, you're gonna say it. You're gonna put it on your stream and be more of a trusted advisor as opposed to just um, someone who's taking gear from me and maybe doing a commercial. So I do love that fact that you guys do that.
Yeah, I think that's critical. I know you're the same way, James, is just because somebody wants to offer us something doesn't mean we're gonna take it. If it's
Yeah.
not something we believe in,
Hmm.
it doesn't matter, right? You could say, "Hey, I'll give you $10,000 to talk about this mouse." I'm like, "No, I don't I don't like it. I wouldn't use it, so keep your money." And, but there's some people that'll do that because that ultimately brings down all of us, right, when we compromise, and I think that's why it's critical that we, you gotta have standards, right? And that kinda goes back to the military thing, right? Is you gotta have high standards, not only for yourself, but for others in general, I think.
I'm looking at the young man right there. It was
That's
all
2009.
the salt in the beard right there. I'm just, that was before all the salt in the beard. That's all right, man. I'm
Right.
right there with you. Uh, Listen, this was amazing, man. I
Oh,
really
thank
want to say thank you, right? For not just for this conversation, not just for coming on to the show and spreading some information, but just thank you for what it is that you and your colleagues do, right? Tim and the Chris. When you guys collaborate and actually bring value to your audience, it in turn brings value to other people's audiences and communities as well. Because I will share what you guys are talking about with other folks, and then they'll join your circle, they'll join your community, they'll hear what you're talking about. They'll probably buy something off of your Amazon shop, and you'll get a few nickels from that. So thank you for being again that unbiased subject matter expert and trusted advisor for the things that you talk about, and for just being willing to have that conversation, right? Not
oh, thank
having
you.
just the water cooler knowledge, not just having it locked up amongst yourself, but you're actually open to training. You're open to education, right? You're open to letting other folks know this is how I'm doing it. I just did it or going to do it. This is how I'm doing it. This is how you can do it as well. I've been through some pitfalls. I've been through some negative situations as well, but you can avoid those detours and go this route, and you can be successful. So again, I just want to say thank you for that piece as well.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. We'll have to have you on, both shows, when you're up for that. We could have
I'll
some
try. I'll
fun with
try to be, I don't know, try to be nice. I'll try to be, cleaned up as well. I cleaned up for you. I wanted to make sure that I was at least presentable. Good Lord, I can't just have Jim Fuhs on the line and not be ready to not be ready to go. So
definitely.
thank you, brother. Well, I appreciate you. Take care of yourself. Be well. I will definitely again put links to all of your assets and all of your locations for folks to check out, and so they can reach out to you. And with that community, if you found some value in this, if you found anything that resonates with you, share it with folks. Talk about it. Subscribe to the channel, and let's continue the conversation where we are. Be well.